Hello friends, here we are at the beginning of the month of October, and so the fall beauty continues even as it's getting colder. There are some things that come with every season, and for a bishop, one of the things that comes with the fall season is the plenary, the gathering of all the bishops of Canada once a year to discuss the many things that are before us as the Church in Canada. Normally we would all fly off to Cornwall in Ontario. There's a huge training center that we can rent, and we spend 5 days there discussing many topics. Well, this year that obviously wasn't going to happen, and so what was organized was actually a virtual plenary. Now think of this. There are 5.5 time zones across Canada. So they had to negotiate with all of that. So in the end we had 2 hours every day and to discuss the key topics. So obviously it was a reduced and much more focused discussion. And just to let you know the types of things that we were especially talking about this year, and I have the agenda here. So at one point it was the decision to embrace more fully our mission as bishops, as dioceses, for marriage, family, and respect for life. There has been an organization called COLF, in which the CCCB and the Knights of Columbus participated, sort of a joint board. But what was decided was that no, we should make it fully a office of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. So that would be like we have an office for liturgy in English, an office for liturgy in French, an office for catechesis and evangelization, and so on. And so because there are so many questions, both ethical questions around life, beginning of life, end of life, and a whole lot of other often medical ethical questions, but also the pastoral approach, how to best help couples preparing to get married, how to really help enrich the life of married couples in the early years of marriage, in the later years of marriage. So it was decided that, and again with the continuing help of the Knights of Columbus, massive, generous help of the Knights of Columbus, to have the office properly within, as a work of the Canadian bishops. We also continued to work on it's a question of the responsible ministry and protection of minors and vulnerable persons. We have a standing committee now, and to really put forth before the dioceses on an ongoing way the best practices, both to prevent and to educate and to grow in that sense of really being as sure as we can that the children, the vulnerable adults are not in any way harmed by ministers of the church, whether it's priests or deacons or lay people that are hired or volunteer lay people. So just continuing to work at that so that there's a standard that all dioceses must step up to, and including how to deal with historic cases, people bringing up the abuse they suffered in the past and how to deal with that, and to create a greater sense of transparency and hopefully the renewal of greater trust upon the church, in the church in Canada around all of that. We also talked very much about the continuing efforts to increase or improve the relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous, both within the church, so all of the Indigenous Catholics, the respect of their identity, traditions, as they live out their Catholic faith, but also the relationships between the Catholic Church in Canada and Indigenous bodies, Indigenous concerns across all of Canada, among all the First Nations. So some definite steps being worked on, and with the Indigenous in our community and Indigenous political leaders, of how to walk towards better relationships, towards reconciliation. There was also the question of development and peace, and the bishops, by a certain number of them being on the National Council. There will be 4 bishops in a 15-member council, but those bishops also being involved in the different committees dealing with different aspects of its work. And it's the sense then that the bishops are saying, not just saying it's the Canadian Catholic organization, the Church's organization for questions around the Third World, but actually being present to those efforts and really working with the many dedicated lay people. And so yes, it was a different plenary, but it was a rich plenary. It went well. And luckily the technology worked and they had some very good people moderating that technology. I just want to finish off and say that next week we will be talking about the clarifications that are being brought to many questions around, as we continue in this pandemic, masks, singing by the congregation, communion on the tongue, safety procedures, just all of that. We know we've gone into a second wave. Measures by public health have been heightened. So what must we do in our parishes? And we're doing that effort of consultation, asking the parishes, pastors, leaders of the COVID response in each parish, what are your questions? What are your in the weeds, detailed questions, so that we can answer that, bring some uniformity. And also that's an effort that we're doing together with the Archdiocese of Winnipeg and the Ukrainian Catholic Archieparchy, so that there's a coming together of minds, the best ideas, making sure as many bases are covered, and in essence a uniform message. So much work is being done right now about that. Council of Priests meeting next Wednesday to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's, and then that information in a whole host of ways on the website, weekly bulletin, links, so that really the faithful of the diocese and the parish leadership can know where to go to for both the information and the direction, the common direction. So lots on the plate, but that's fine. That's just very fine. And all of this communication and effort, I feel, is bringing us closer together as a diocesan family. So continue to pray for the efforts of leadership at all levels. So thank you very much, and I wish you a good week.